I used to deliver Chinese food for a local restaurant. I was just a teenager in high school at the time, and whatever job I got wasn't going to be for more than a year or two. I'd say this job was fairly typical to most first jobs or retail and food service jobs because it had some slow and boring days and some busy and stressful days. As the delivery driver, though, I was always thankful to not have to be working in the store and dealing with mobs of customers. On this night, I started at 6 p.m. It was a Friday, so I was working a late 6 to 12 shift. As soon as I clocked in, I was delivering orders non-stop for the next 2 hours, with no time to breathe in between them. At 8, orders were slowing a bit, but I still had a few more to deliver before I could take my lunch. So I grabbed the 3 orders and set out to get them done before 9. The first one was close, but the next 2 were further out. This isn't uncommon, as our town isn't all packed together. I got to the second house and dropped it off, then headed out to the final stop. It was 10 minutes from where I was, and the tag said it wasn't paid for yet. All I was thinking about during this drive was the break I'd get afterward. Going back and forth for 3 hours straight tired me out more than usual this night. I pulled into the neighborhood and followed the GPS until I got to a back portion where the whole atmosphere quickly changed. I turned down a thin road of cracked pavement and potholes with barely visible small houses on the side, covered by the thick bushes and unkempt lawns. When the GPS told me I'd arrived, I stopped the car but didn't see a house. I turned my brights on, and ever so faintly, I could see the outline of a small house pretty far from the road I was on. I then looked at the grass leading up to it and realized there was actually a driveway. It was just engulfed in vines and tall grass. I would never have seen it if I hadn't seen the house first. Knowing I would be unable to even drive on it, I put the car in park, got out with the bag, and began to walk through the overgrown driveway. I couldn't believe how awful it was to walk through, and I couldn't imagine anyone letting their driveway get to this point. Getting closer, though, I could see more of the house. It was very small, kind of like a trailer home, and looked to be in a matching condition to the driveway, with vines growing over the windows and bushes covering every inch of the nearly decaying house. As I made my way up to the front door, I knew something was wrong. I knew it in my gut and in my head, but I was just some kid with a first job that was scared to lose it, so I felt like I had to do my job, which was to deliver the order to this address. I pushed all my bad feelings aside and knocked on the door. Right away, I heard footsteps coming up to the door. It opened, revealing a young lady behind it. At first, in the dim lighting, she looked very normal, and I felt a huge relief. But it only took a few more seconds to realize that her normal look was eerily out of place with the house in this condition. There was no way she could be so well-dressed and taken care of. As these thoughts scrambled through my head, she opened the screen door and said in a creepily calm tone, "Come in." Everything hit me in that moment as I stumbled back a few steps and decided that I needed to leave right away. I turned around, and only a second after beginning to leave, I heard a thud from the side of the house. I looked over, seeing 2 men running out from behind the house and sprinting through the bushes toward me. I dropped everything and started running. I did everything I could to get through the thick grass and vines, but just as I reached the end of the driveway, I stumbled to the ground, tripping over something. I hurried up, hearing their footsteps closing the distance on me. I couldn't even get myself to look back as I ran straight to my car, turning it on. The men immediately stopped and ran back to where they came from. With my whole body still shaking from the adrenaline, I turned the car around and drove away. Of course, I let my boss know what happened, and he urged me to call the police and report it. I was really relieved to know he didn't care about the order and only for my safety, which, looking back on it, would have been horrible if it were any other way. Police interviewed me and my boss and did a whole investigation, ultimately unable to find any of the people. The property I was on, though, was actually state-owned, and the trespassing sign at the beginning of the road had been dug up and thrown into the tall grass. Their intentions are unknown, but it seems like the most obvious possibility is the answer. I just hope nobody else has to go through what I did, or if they do, I hope they can be as lucky as I was to get away. I signed up for Uber Eats back when it was really gaining traction in 2021. I'd just gotten laid off from my previous job, and it seemed nearly impossible to find any other job quickly, so this was a bit of a risk that I hoped would work out. A couple of months in, I was enjoying it enough, and it was paying me enough for me to keep with it. This happened just around a year after I started. I'd fallen into the habit of waking up late and staying up late, so I hadn't started working until around dinner time. By 11 p.m., I still hadn't made enough to be good for the night, so I continued on, taking pretty much any order that popped up. It was at 1 a.m. when an order came through that was interesting. It was a grocery order from a 24-hour 7-Eleven gas station. I still accepted it, but it was just odd to me that someone would need groceries from a gas station in the middle of the night. I drove up and parked at the mostly empty gas station and went into the convenience store. The only person inside was a kind old man working at the register. I picked up the bag from him and also got myself a cup of coffee for the road, then headed back to my car. I got in and situated myself before backing out and getting on the road for the final stretch of the drive. Only a moment after getting onto the main street, though, I noticed a car's headlights right behind me. Mind you, this was very late, and almost no cars were out, so I was sure I would have seen them before they were so close. After some thinking, I thought they must have been at the gas station, maybe parked on the side of the building and pulled out as soon as I did. I drove along this same road for a while, reaching the edge of town, when I suddenly felt something wrong with my car. It was way bumpier than usual, and a loud kind of scraping sound was coming from the right side. After a minute from noticing this, it became a lot worse, so bad that I had to pull off to the side before the car would break down in the road. I parked on the shoulder with woods on either side of me, but in the mirror, I saw the headlights of that same car slowing down and pulling in right behind me. Unsure what was going on, I decided to get out quickly and see what the problem was. I didn't know if the car behind me was going to try and help me out or if they had something else in mind, but I knew I couldn't go anywhere until I figured this out. I ran around to the other side of my car and quickly noticed the problem. My right tire was completely flattened, which was crazy. I hadn't run over anything, and usually, flat tires happen gradually, not so suddenly like this. I took a closer look, seeing a gash right on the side of the tire that didn't look natural at all. Then I heard a door open from the car behind me. A man stepped out and waved at me. "I'm okay, thank you," I called out, trying to get them to leave before even approaching, especially after realizing this was all really sketchy. But the man kept walking toward me. Once he got maybe 10 feet away, I could see him more clearly. He was older, with long gray and black hair and a bushy, untamed beard. He wore basic clothes, jeans and a hoodie, but they were covered in stains and grime. He came up next to my car and asked if he could help me out, showing a large smile. I said again that I was okay, but he only laughed, looking at my tire and back at me. A few seconds of awkward silence passed as the man held his smile before I lied and said I had a friend on his way to pick me up. Now, having rejected his help 3 times, the man's smile gradually fell into a straight face. He turned his body toward the car and very unnaturally looked around. This is when I got the immediate rush through my body to get away from this man, and I only had one option to do so. I bolted off the road into the tree line, hearing the man follow me into the pitch-black woods. It only lasted for a few seconds before I lost him. After that, I didn't go very far at all, still able to see the headlights on the road, and I could make out the man's figure moving around by the cars. A few minutes later, he got in his car and left. By now, I'd had enough time to pretty much figure out that this was all a setup from the Uber Eats order, having been followed from the gas station where he likely slashed my tire. However, I didn't think it would be so easy to catch him. His full name and everything on the app turned out to be real. I guess he didn't think that we would tie it all back to the Uber Eats order. That being said, the punishment wasn't very harsh because he didn't harm me. He only stole some things from my car, though I'm sure that if I had stayed there on the road, I might not even be here to share this story. I'm currently 25 years old, although at the time of the story, I was 20. I live in Newark, Delaware, a usually small and quiet town that is until college season rolls around in the fall and spring. Newark is home to the University of Delaware, which is a large and widely respected school in the U.S. It also has a reputation for being a big party school, so when the college kids arrive, things get a lot more lively. Anyway, I work as a bicycle delivery guy at Jimmy John's, a job I still work at as of me telling this story. This event took place during a Tuesday or Wednesday night in the spring, either late April or early May, I can't remember exactly. It was my typical 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. The Jimmy John's I work at is open until 2 on weekdays and 3 on weekends. This means we're one of the few places still open in town aside from the bars, so a lot of drunk college kids storm the place wanting to order. Needless to say, it gets pretty hectic. Deliveries would pop up like crazy, which did get very annoying, but it meant a lot of tips, so I always put up with it. This was my last night working the shift, and just as 2 a.m. was about to roll around, one last delivery came in, and I was next in line to take it. This annoyed me, as I just wanted to end my shift and go home to get some sleep. I sucked it up and took the delivery since I didn't have a choice. I knew the street by heart and knew where to go immediately. I should mention that the reason we do bicycle deliveries is that the roads tend to be busy sometimes during college season, so using bicycles sometimes allows us to do deliveries faster. I rode my bike as fast as I could to the house in less than 10 minutes. I knocked on the door loudly, but there was no answer. I knocked again, louder this time, still nothing. I became a little pissed when I remembered if someone didn't come out, I'd have to take the order back to the store, meaning this delivery would seriously be wasting my time. I called the number on the receipt, but no one answered. I was getting ready to call the store when I first heard it, rustling sounds coming from some bushes directly across the street from me. I figured it was probably the wind, but decided to look anyway. When I did, I felt my stomach drop as a strong sense of dread flowed through me. I saw the dark figure of a person directly across the street from me, in someone's yard, crouched behind a few bushes. Even though I couldn't make out any facial features, I knew that he, or rather, I figured it was he was looking right at me. My heart was racing, but it didn't seem like he noticed that I noticed him. I pretended to not notice him and knocked loudly on the door again. Still, there was no answer. I began to grow more and more panicked, wondering whether or not this could be a trap. I did a quick glance, and the person was still crouched behind the bushes, watching me. I just wanted to get the hell out of there, so I decided to just continuously knock on the door as loud as possible until someone answered. It felt like hours that I was knocking, but eventually, someone stumbled out from one of the rooms and sluggishly answered the door, sounding pissed. When I told him about the order, he told me that he didn't order, so it was probably his roommate instead. To my misfortune, the person who actually ordered was upstairs in his room, passed out drunk. How he could have passed out so quickly after he ordered is still beyond me. The guy went upstairs to try and get him. Not even a minute after he went upstairs, I suddenly heard more rustling and did a quick glance back. When I did, I noticed the man had moved a little closer, probably to get a better view of me. I could tell he was still watching me. My fear intensified. I almost wanted to come inside to get away from the man watching me, but I figured he'd steal my bike, meaning I couldn't do my job anymore. Plus, I didn't know if this person was armed and if he would actually try something if I went inside, which would put the two of them in harm's way. Luckily, he was only upstairs for a minute. He said his roommate's door was locked and that he wouldn't answer the door when he knocked. At this point, I really wanted to get out of there, so I told him he could sign for his roommate's order. He hesitated at first since there wasn't a tip charged to the order, but a tip was the last thing I was thinking about at this point. I insisted over and over, and eventually, he signed for his roommate. I handed it to him and gave him a quick thank you. When he shut the door, I hurried to my bike and hopped on, ready to get the hell out of there. But just as I put the kickstand up, I heard the man suddenly lunge out from behind the bushes. I quickly turned to my left and saw that the man was now dashing toward me. I was able to see he was wearing what looked like jeans, boots, and a black hoodie with the hood over his head, and what I think was some sort of mask on his face, as I could only see his eyes. Although I'm not 100% on this, it looked like he was holding a blade in one of his hands. I knew I had to act quickly. I couldn't make a U-turn because he'd probably catch me before I could get away. To make matters worse, all the surrounding streets led to dead ends. My only chance was to head to a bike trail that was nearby. Even though it wasn't lit up and I didn't have a light on my bike, I knew it would be my only chance. I pedaled faster than I ever had before onto the pitch-black trail and rode it, all while looking out for shadows and listening for footsteps. Luckily, the trail wasn't long, and I knew it by heart. Still, I was extremely paranoid by this point and got startled whenever I heard any noise at all. I didn't see the man while I was on the trail, however, and I made it back to the store safely. I was hyperventilating like crazy as I tried to wrap my head around what the hell just happened. I didn't tell my boss or coworkers, nor did I call the police since I didn't get a good look at the man. I simply got my stuff and clocked out and went to my car, putting my bike in the trunk, so thankful I decided to drive that night. I made it home safe without anyone following me, and that was that. I never saw the man again. I don't know what he wanted, whether he wanted to rob me or worse. I haven't worked another midnight shift since then, and now I carry nunchucks on me whenever I do any kind of night shift. New York isn't known for being a dangerous town, so the fact that this happened here truly showed me that anything can happen anywhere to anyone at any time, no matter how safe or dangerous the area may be. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.